Dennis Steigerwalt, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm well, Dave. Good morning from Oakmont, PA.
I love it. I love it. How is the weather in PA? Is it nice?
Yeah, today it is. I'm looking outside right now. I got a bit of sunshine. I can even see my kids playing in the grass. So,
I love it. Good,
yeah,
good,
right
good.
on.
I know that's what I got to do. I got to send my kids out every time I do one of these live feeds. So, what did you think about the Ayumi opening for Staycation April 22nd? Did you like that graphic?
Yeah, that's fantastic. No, we're excited about everything that she's been doing with our group, and I think she did a really nice job encapsulating everything that Betsy and I shared through that presentation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we're going to put that out and we'll share some more information with everybody. So all right, Dennis, let's get into this a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, your journey to Housing Innovation Alliance and being the president of the Housing Innovation Alliance.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's hard to believe that the first time you and I connected was almost a year ago now, right? When we were in our office in Pittsburgh. So
We're not going to talk about that 1 a.m. Was it Pittsburgh or was it the 1 a.m. scooter rides out in Arizona?
last time we had this video chat is what I meant.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so my career in, let's say, collaborative innovation programs and strategic alliances started back in 2011. I started leading international programs for a company called Ibicus, which is the founding member of the Housing Innovation Alliance as well. So I was leading their projects based in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, tongue twister there, and we were working on some nationwide strategic innovation initiatives as well as some very large scale market development programs with a host of international companies. And through that initiative, I learned kind of what it meant to be a boundary spanner, to kind of work through a wide cross section of each organization and kind of the differences between working within different business cultures as well as different geographies and so on. So over a number of years, worked in the Middle East, boomerang back to the United States in 2018, set up shop with the Alliance in 2019, and took over as the president in June. So stepped in really to look at how do we grow the community? What's the smart growth of the breadth and depth of our organization, and how do we create something that can have a long-term meaningful impact for our stakeholders?
Sure, sure. So your whole family lived over in the UAE, right? I'm not even trying to say. I'm just going to say UAE.
Yeah, that's correct. My oldest son was actually born there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So now you're back in the States. What brought you back to the Housing Innovation Alliance? And can you give us a little bit of history on how you got to the position you're in?
Yeah, sure. So having worked with Ibicus for a number of years and knowing the Housing Innovation Alliance more as a member, let's say as I was leading the programs overseas, than being on the team itself, when I boomerang back to the US, there was a lot of interest for me to continue the types of programs that I'd worked on overseas. Again, looking at these large scale industry collaboration programs, kind of big impact on a specific industry, which is construction and residential development, where I have a big passion to kind of help propagate activity. So when I sat down with the team from Ibicus and kind of chatted a little bit with them about what we were going to be, what I was doing back in the US and how long I planned on being back for, at that point it was, I'm back for good. My wife was happy. Once you move your wife back from Dubai, she's staying back from Dubai. So, especially when her parents and a lot of her family's here in Pittsburgh. So we had settled in. We had our second son as soon as we landed back, and I had mentioned, look, we're looking to do something big. We're looking to do something exciting, and there was an opportunity again to work with Betsy and the team on the Housing Innovation Alliance. So after connecting with George Casey, the chairman of our board, Michael Dickens, the vice chairman, and meeting many of the other board members, it seemed to me to be a very good opportunity to where I could add a lot of value from the international relationships and skill set that I have, as well as apply and leverage the knowledge I had on the U.S. market.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So I've been fortunate enough to be kind of hanging out with the Housing Innovation Alliance now for, I guess it's almost 2 years or so, I would think overall. Yeah. And I have to tell you, as far as being around some of the most innovative, forward thinking people consistently month after month, year after year, and the networking and the people that I've met, I mean, it's absolutely amazing what you guys do.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. No, the community's been the growth of the community and our vision has been very deliberate. So, if we look at attainable housing for all, and then we kind of really focus in on that middle market opportunity that's been ignored for a decade, and we try to create peace of mind for consumers from a quality and performance perspective, and price point. We try to look at how we also do all that in harmony with creating sustainable profits for the builders so that they can thrive.
Right.
And I think this is a very, the market opportunity is big enough. Everybody's impacted by housing. And I think this is a great way, what we've been able to do over as we've matured the organization is really kind of continue to bring in the best and the brightest from across the industry. And now we're starting to engage a number of people from outside the industry that are kind of trying to keep an eye on what's going on. So these outsiders and these other influencers.
Right. Tell us a little bit about what it is or what your vision is, what your focus is right now in Housing Innovation Alliance. And I have a feeling that's changed quite a bit since COVID kicked in as far as how you approach it. But can you kind of let us know what direction you're heading?
Well, I think the COVID-19 public health challenge actually accelerated a lot of thinking that we already had on the table. So when we ended last year, a big part of our programming was going to be how do we move to a more virtual, scalable environment? So we were looking at all kinds of different technology platforms in a way to increase the frequency in which we are engaging with our community already. Fast forward to mid-February of 2020, and things really started to take shape with how we were going to be impacted as a country and as an economy and as individuals, our families and our communities. So we started to go on the offense immediately. We looked at how can we accelerate some of the thinking that we already had out there on increasing the kind of virtual engagement again. So that was something we rolled out very quickly. I believe our team did a fantastic job completing the research and going through all of the kind of risk profiling that's necessary in a tool in a program like this. And we internally were able to make the decision late February that we were going to make this transition to, say, for example, the virtual conference, which is the staycation on Wednesday. Although we didn't announce it till mid-March because we wanted to make sure we had everything buttoned up, we were able to make that pivot very quickly because we had been thinking down that path. So I think a lot of what you're going to see from us is a continued exercise in experimentation. That's the one thing you'll see a lot more of this year. I think you're going to see a lot more of it from other businesses out there, not only in our industry, across the ecosystem, right? We have to be decisive and empathetic as we move forward. We have to be thinking about how we can help the collective good as an organization, because we're in this together. There's not any finger pointing in this exercise. Kind of in 2009, when things fell apart, there were some people that we believe led us to the slaughter, right? As a country and as an economy. That's not the case here. This is something we all are dealing with as individuals, as families, as communities. So I think that this experimentation piece that will come out of that for us is critical to all organizations and will be very important to ours. So some of the things you'll be seeing coming out very quickly will be we're rolling out the virtual conference. We have our podcast series will be starting this week. So we've completed the first few shows and we have the next 15 or so lined up. The frequency of that'll change based off what other events and activities we have. We have several products and tools we'll be launching, like the offsite heat map that you saw or that you helped us to roll out just a few weeks ago.
I did. Love it.
Yeah, we have the Bim Road Map and the Attainability Roadmap, which are all kind of very carefully curated and packaged solutions from the conversations we had with our community over the last 6, 12, 18 months. And then we're also going to be rolling out our coffee chat series. So we're going to be, twice a month, we're going to be getting together for an hour with thought leaders based off conversations that have bubbled up from the different dialogues we're having with our community.
Yeah. So let's dive into some of these. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up with Staycation. What can people expect? And just if you're joining us now, this is Dennis Steigerwalt, President of Housing Innovation Alliance. Please like and share this right now if you're sitting there watching, so we get this word out there. And in the link is links to register for the Housing Innovation Alliance Staycation event. So tell us, Dennis, what's the Staycation about?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. So the Staycation is a modified version of our live conference that would typically take place around this time every year. And what we're doing is we're bringing together thought leaders from across the delivery chain to exchange on a couple key topics. We're going to be looking at strategic communications. We're going to be looking at alternative business models, and we're going to look at innovation for the production builder and innovative delivery models. So what we've done is we've curated a series of thought leaders, again, from all across the industry, members of our community, new participants, targets that we'd like to bring in because we believe they bring a lot of value. And we'd structured this over the course of the day. So it starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 5:15 p.m. on Wednesday. The 8 to 10 o'clock slot is an opportunity for you to come in as a visitor or as an attendee and join either in our networking lounge or to go visit through to kind of peruse the swag bag, which is an online portal which contains the complete presentation, which was summarized so well by Ayumi in her in her graphic recording, as well as other presentations and content that we've created specific to this event, like the Craig Collin keynote that was last Wednesday as well.
Right.
So this will be the beginning part, and then we'll roll into the sessions. Now, what's great about this is we've actually found a format robust enough, or a platform robust enough, that we can bring one of the best components of our live events into the virtual environment, which is our think tank sessions. So our ability to tell a great story using the partners that have delivered a specific solution in the market, make it relevant to our community, and then break off and have conversations about those solutions in smaller kind of clustered groups, if you will. So we'll be able to do that throughout the course of the day, linked back to each of the core topics that I mentioned. And you can, as you've so nicely shared the link for the website and the event for us, you can check out the full agenda on that event page as well.
Right, right. Love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit about these breakout rooms and how are people, this is a virtual event. So virtually we're all coming in. There's going to be a grand opening, I'm assuming, on how this is all going to work. Right. And I mean, there's just so much happening. It's going to be like we're actually at a live event somewhere. That's what it's feeling like.
As best as we can replicate it. Absolutely. So, and as I mentioned, this is something we had been thinking through prior to launching this event. So we've been looking into different platforms. This one we believe allows us to do what we need to do. And when it's successful, we'll replicate it a couple more times. But it actually leverages a Zoom backend. So very familiar with, I'm sure just about everybody that's watching this today has been on a number of Zoom calls over the past few weeks. So this will, it's a technology that everybody's familiar with, and it has the ability to kind of slice and dice the audience into these separate breakout rooms. So after we provide a panel through the theater that is part of this, again, this virtual platform that you log into, we can actually allocate the attendees to different sessions so that we can have a nice mix of stakeholder groups in each of the conversations.
Yeah, so this is going to be a little bit like the live roundtables, these breakout rooms, where we all get together at a table and then we discuss a certain topic that you guys have put out there. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Now it's going to be a little bit bigger in those situations. You're used to each table maybe being 8 to 10, something like you'd see at a small wedding. But in this situation, the breakout rooms will probably be closer to 60 to 70 people. And they'll actually be facilitated by what we're calling Kickstarters. So we have a group of people from within our community that have taken the lead that will take the lead in each of these conversations to kind of get things rolling. And then after that, we'll actually have the ability to assign a co-host opportunity to anybody else that's participating in the room so that we can hear their thoughts. And again, it becomes an evolving dialogue. At the end of all this, we'll package it up and roll it out to the community at large.
Great, great. And what about people that, can jump in, can jump out? I mean, is that possible? Do you have to be in the whole day, or can you come in for specific events?
Well, of course, we'd love for you to be there the entire time, right?
Absolutely.
But we're respectful of the fact that people have a lot on their schedules right now. There's a lot to be done and a lot to be monitored. We also want to make sure that we provide this resource to them as flexible as possible, so you can come in and out of the sessions as your schedule allows, and you can come in and out of what we call the networking lounge, so that you can actually make some of those personal connections. So we do have the ability for you to go into the lounge, see who else is participating in the event, and actually dial them up for a one-on-one chat, just like you would have the old-fashioned handshake and hello at one of our conferences.
Elbow bumps.
Yeah, now moving up, right?
So, it's really cool. Yeah. So, the whole idea is for this to be an interactive audience participation event, just as if we're standing there face to face, no different than if we were standing there face to face, right?
Absolutely.
So that's really it. So for those of you that are tuning in, this is really important that we actually, participate in this, ask questions, get involved. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All right. What's in the swag bag? Tell me.
Yeah. You know what? I can't tell you everything. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to come to the event, right? Well, I mentioned a couple of the pieces. So you have the 25-minute overview that Betsy and I prepared last week on kind of our view on the future of the home delivery, a future of home delivery in the United States. And that's kind of building off of the keynote session with Craig Collin. And it's been articulated in the graphic recording you shared. So those are two of the key pieces: the keynote and the piece that Betsy and I have prepared. And then there will be a number of other components specifically related to each of the industry experts that are speaking on the panel session. So there's additional material on them, pieces they've published, interviews that they've conducted, as a way to get more familiar with who they are and what they're doing. I believe our podcast will also be available in there as we kick off that series.
Sure. I love it. So staycation, everybody's going to be there and have fun, and we're going to interact. Tell me a little bit about this Bim Road Map.
Yeah. Well, the Bim Road Map is a tool that we started developing last year. And it's a way to kind of assess and understand what's going on in the industry from a BIM adoption perspective within residential construction. So we've conducted a number of case studies, working hand in hand with our community members, both software, material, and builder. So supplier groups. We have a nice core group of audiences that we're working with, and it allows us to kind of paint the picture for what are some of the risks that you're going to face, what are the timelines that you need to have in place. And BIM adoption is a top-down decision-making process. So kind of how do you set your culture up for success in this time period as well?
So, Dennis, I think everything you guys are laying out, with the heat map, with the BIM, I mean, this is part of the focus of the Housing Innovation Alliance, is to bring these tools, as they're needed, and actually be ahead of the curve, right?
Correct. Tools and resources are a big part of what we do. We want to help you make your decisions easier, right? And I think if we take a look at kind of the current state of things for us, and as an industry and as individuals, the economy is in a bit of a tailspin. 40% of the market is kind of locked down at the moment, and there's a lot of businesses that are going to come through this smarter, stronger, and better than when they came into it. And sadly, a number will not see this through, but the entrepreneurs out there will continue to take advantage of the new doors that will open. So what we want to do is we want to be there as we emerge from this and make sure that we're keeping everyone's heads up and a long view on the strategic focus of what innovation means for our industry to support and accelerate adoption of many of the things that were already happening before the public health challenge came into play.
Sure, sure. All right. With that, if you're out there watching, Dennis Steigerwalt, president of the Housing Innovation Alliance, as an audience that's watching this right now, what questions do you have? Give us some questions. What are your comments? What do you want to ask Dennis about? I mean, you guys are doing so many innovative things. There's so many cool projects coming up. Like I said, we just had Craig Collins on. I mean, how cool is that? Doing a keynote, and the whole staycation is going to be packed with speakers like Craig. And I think, now's the time to ask questions. Now's the time to give us some feedback, right? If you want to hear something from Dennis.
Yeah, and I'll also, while questions are kind of being queued up, there's a couple things that I'd like to throw out. Part of what we do is we curate these experiences, right? So there's a couple things that we're looking at trying to answer right now. So in addition to the topics that I mentioned and that you see kind of articulated in our future of home delivery, it would be great to understand what are the topics that your audience would like us to be addressing over the course of this year. So we're always interested in, hearing top ahead thoughts on where we can focus our programming. So I think that's one key element. And then the other key element I mentioned is, we're in the process of emerging from this public health challenge, and I'd like to get everyone's understanding on kind of where are we now. So when do we think we start kind of unlocking the market and moving back into some sense of normalcy? And then when do we actually hit that period of normalcy? So I'd be curious, in the chat box, this is something that's kind of a pulse survey we've run through our community, but it'd be interesting to see what people have to say about their expectations on timing as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for sure, right? Because there's a lot of chat just on the news right now about opening things back up, in certain states opening up. Small businesses, are to the point where they have to open or they're not going to, make it. So I think it's a great question. I think it would be an interesting thing to learn about on what people are thinking, whether it's a big production builder all the way down to a smaller builder or supplier, on what's going on out there. What are you guys hearing from your community as far as the pulse of what's happening and how we're going to come out of this?
Well, it's interesting. I'm in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned when we first signed on. So we're one of the more conservative states from considering construction as essential housing, right? And so you can't swing a hammer, especially not even in Allegheny County right now. So it's always interesting to have kind of live in this space and talk to the local players, but then also look at the regional and national players that are still operating. Now, it's not business as usual, but they're operating in a way that allows their employees to be kept safe, and all of their partners to be safe and still deliver the homes that the families they serve need. We're hearing, there's a variety of feedback actually coming out. When do we start to kind of see things unlock? Generally, people are saying June. When do we start to get back to some sense of normalcy? We're hearing January, but I don't want to feed the pipe here. I'm kind of curious to hear what everyone else says. And again, this is just what we're hearing from kind of collective, kind of crowdsourcing those insights.
Right. So what are you guys seeing as far as in your own personal mind and what you're seeing out there and wanting to hear other people's thoughts on where this is going or seeing where it's going? What are you seeing as far as being new trends this year? Like what's changing outside of the COVID? I mean, if it was business
Mm-hmm.
as normal, outside of Bim Road Maps and offsite heat maps, what
Mm-hmm.
are you guys seeing as kind of the future moving forward, or what's some big changes we can all start looking at?
Yeah, well, I think it's really hard to separate the two to say where are we going and where are we going if if COVID wasn't here, right? So I think first comment is there's a lot that was already kind of moving forward from a labor issue perspective, attainability perspective, regulatory side of things that is not going to that's not going to go away, and in fact, it will be accelerated through all this, it more than likely. I think also if you look at some of the trends, I think that you're going to see consumers demanding a different type of home environment, right? I think healthy home will become much more prominent. I think you'll see more outdoor space desirable in the event that we were to end up in this type of situation again. And I think one of the areas that interests me most is kind of this home as a service model. So if you think about the relationship we have with the house, that's changing. So I had this great conversation with Chris Langford from my Idea Partners a couple weeks ago, and he hit it right on the head. He's the bond he has with his home is strengthening through all of this because now he's there. He's been able to demystify, as he said, a few kind of DIY projects, and that's been really rewarding for him. And he's kind of created more of a space that he's excited about. And then there's the other side of it, which is more is the convenience of home as a service, and what are the different elements and components on that spectrum that will be explored and delivered over the course of this changing market landscape. I think that's everything from kind of the very simple, what are the subscription services that give us peace of mind? What are the single family for rent models that will be out there? And then also, how do you get into the more advanced kind of, these are like living environments that respond to the way that we actually engage with our home, that better informs the products and the technologies that are in them and how they respond to us and our needs.
Right. Well, I want to give a quick shout out just because there's some people watching here. We have Margaret Whalen, we got Michael Dickens, all looking forward to next Wednesday. So thanks for joining us. And we're going to get to a Q&A and ask answers and questions here in a few minutes. But I actually have a question based on the staycation. Have any of the presenters changed their Wednesday presentation, based on the macro climate of, what's going on? Did they shift or did they pivot because of recent events on what they're going to talk about?
Well, so when we had originally teed up these presenters, many of them were signed up for our April event, our live April event, right? So that they were lined up months before we had made this change. I think once we started to make the change, some of the stories started to be modified as well. Again, we'll see a little bit of that. I mean, because this changes day to day. I mean, in some ways, every day we wake up and go to the office, and you're not quite sure what how you're going to have to respond to. I think that this is also going to impact. They've all been in their respective areas for a number of years, and I think they're going to they'll be light on their feet to respond quickly to what's happening in that given day or this given week based off what their performance or their presentation was.
Yeah, for sure. It's also going to be interesting to see how companies change the way they work based on this. Now everybody is forced into trying work at home, social distancing, right? So it's changing the way we all work. Like you're at your house, I'm at my house, everybody's at their house. We're not actually together. It'll be interesting to see how that changes the way these bigger companies and even smaller companies all work and how they deal with meetings. And, is it going to be just virtual events moving forward? Or do you think we're going to shake hands again?
Yeah, well, I think so. And a lot of the organizations that we work with, and a lot of the companies that my friends are in different industries, and professional networking groups that I engage with, kind of going through all this, everybody had this technology roadmap, kind of on the bookshelf of all the things they wanted to implement over the next few years to kind of better digitally enable their business. And I think a lot of organizations are pulling that off the shelf now and saying, right, now's the time. There's a lot of large companies that have been hesitant to promote the work from home or the connected employee environment that had to do it within 24 hours to stay alive. So these, I think what we're seeing is we're opening our minds to an entirely new way of working. And it's not just the remote employee component of it. It's going to be, there's a lot of cultural changes, I think, that'll take place within organizations and in how we make decisions, some of the bureaucracy that's been layered into some of these companies. What and how we leverage digital tools and resources that they're out there, and we've just been slow in some ways to adopt them because things were good, right? We had 10 years of rock solid economic
Yeah,
growth, and
yeah.
it just came to a slamming halt. So I think I don't want to mitigate the situation. There's a lot of people that have their lives at risk out there, right? And I'm very grateful that this has been, for me and my family, it's been an inconvenience, but we haven't been placed in harm's way yet. But this is, there's going to be a lot of good that does come from this within how we as a society operate, I think, and in how we operate as businesses.
Yeah, for sure. So, moving this forward and coming out of this, construction right now, there's a lot of construction workers out of work now. There's a lot of them out of work. I was reading some stats even in New York City. Is that going to change the landscape even further for the way we build moving forward?
Well, I don't want to speak to I don't want to speak specifically to promoting offsite construction as an answer here,
Yeah.
but I think that we are going to see a shift in the balance of onsite versus offsite, and I don't know what that is really going to mean just yet, but we're having a lot of conversations with different groups that are talking about, it's easier to space people out on site right now. So if you're able to get your workforce in, and as you're kind of ramping back up, that's an easier model to work with. But we're also hearing on the other side of it that within offsite construction, it's easier to kind of package up some employee benefits and put healthcare on-site healthcare, for example, a nurse that's checking temperatures as you're walking into the factory, having a nurse-aided childcare so that your employees can be on shift when they need to be. So I think there's going to be some changes for sure. We already were running into some labor issues, right? So this is going to kind of, I think, again, going to exaggerate some of that, and we're going to have to deal with that sooner rather than later. I think also when we look at workforce development, what does it mean for the market and how it changes going forward, and how we focus our efforts in the workforce? The job to be done on site and in the factory is going to be different 5 years from now than it is today, and this just moved us faster towards that.
Yeah, it really has. And, it's not just the workforce, it's the, housing affordability and everything else that we've been talking about over the last years. And I think that, so many people out of jobs, is that going to cause us even more problems with housing affordability?
Well, as I don't want to, I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to speculate on how this all unfolds.
Yeah.
But I think big picture, if I look at the economy, it's, as I mentioned before, 40% of it's on lockdown. There's this knock-on effect that we don't really quite have our hands around what that true impact has been across all the other industries that are interconnected. And when we restart from this, we're going to be restarting in a way it's going to be a bit of a cold restart. Right? I liken it to when I was a kid. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, in the eastern side of the state, and every spring we couldn't wait to get our four-wheelers and dirt bikes out of the garage and start them up. And we put everything we could into kickstarting that engine. And sometimes it wouldn't kickstart, so we'd have to push that sucker down the driveway and lock it into gear and get it right, and we'd zoom off. And when that didn't work, we'd call up the neighbors and they'd push us down the street. So my point of this is to get things moving after kind of that long winter. You hope for the best, but you need to prepare for the worst. And I think that's where a lot of us are getting to now, and we're understanding, as I said, sadly, there's a lot of businesses that won't see the other side of this. But on the bright side, there's a lot of new opportunities that will open up as a result of that, and the entrepreneurs will step in and take advantage and deliver us the solutions that we need at that time.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Those are all great answers. You're pretty good at this.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's see what we have here. You want to do a little Q&A?
Sure, why not?
You up for it? Can anybody ask harder questions than me today? All right. I apologize if I don't say this properly. Jayun Yi, can you speak to home as a service post-COVID-19, especially in an urban context? Would the co-living model continue to thrive?
That's a very interesting question. I was attending the ULI's Housing Opportunity Conference in February, and there was this great presenter on kind of co-living spaces. He was a European entrepreneur who had moved, a German entrepreneur who had moved to the US to kind of launch a co-living a co-living business, and you know, he talked about it. It was all about the programming and the interconnectivity and the engagement within that community. And I think there's still going to be a need for it. It's just going to have a different way of kind of, I'd say, moving people through these environments. And again, it's going to come back to, what does that new norm look like? I mean, the housing attainability issues are not going to go away. We still need to provide housing that all price points of the market can afford, as well as housing that people that are traveling in and out of certain areas for work can afford. And that's going to come back to, that will come back over time, as I said, but it's just going to take us a little while to get there. So I think it really comes back to the creativity and the technology that's enabling the programming within each of those particular business models. I lost your sound, Dave.
Thank you for that. My speaker was off. Sorry.
And I, if I can just add one, so Chris Langford, who's, you know, he's been following home as a service for a long time, and this is kind of his wheelhouse. He'll be joining us for the staycation, and he'll be not only a panelist in one of the discussions, but also part of the Kickstarter conversation for us in the home as a service think tank.
Love it.
Yep.
Another question: what about new tech in homes? You seeing anything out there that's new tech in homes, new design trends, anything like that?
Well, I think you're going to see a renewed focus on healthy home and indoor air quality. I mean, these are not new ideas or concepts, and they certainly were being promoted heavily in the Chawa House as part of the International Builders Show. But I think you're going to see a consumer-driven focus on this much more than the builder introducing the idea. You're going to start to see more of a pull from the consumer on this side of things.
Right.
And I think one of the other points that Betsy hit in our presentation as well is kind of Wi-Fi is the fifth utility. So it's up and running the minute you move in, and the house is wired so it can handle, so we don't run into those issues like we had in our testing session, Dave.
Right. You know what?
Yeah.
We fixed it in about 35 seconds. So
yeah,
we have those. You know, that's the thing with the live feeds, you just can't predict it. So it is what it is, as they say. So, well, Dennis, I really appreciate you joining us. We'll give a shout out to a couple people. We got Ian Pope from England joined us today. Michael Dickens, Rick Hawkins, as always. Glad you joined us, Rick. Denson Mutera. I'm going to say that. I'm not sure if I have it right. Corey Kumiski, Robert Beeks, and Alistair Sawyer. Is there some more coming in? Whoop, look at that. Another question. You ready?
Sure. Go for it.
Any surprising statements or aha moments from Craig's keynote?
Well, I think, I don't know if I had if there was any surprising statements for me specifically. I think what's amazing with the way that they're approaching it is, if it doesn't exist, they're building it into the business, right? So it's kind of innovation at its finest. You know, they're looking for, okay, well, if this is what we want to do and it's not out there, how do we create it, and who are the best partners out in the marketplace to find it? And in many ways that resonates with me and our organization, because that's what we're all about. Again, going back to this collaborative innovation and these strategic alliances that we've all been a part of within the Housing Innovation Alliance and the other projects I've led. It's that ability to identify the gap and then find the right strategic partners to help fill the gap together. And I think, you know, and putting the right financing and business mechanisms behind it to make it successful. So I think for me, that would be the most impressive takeaway from what they're working on together.
Right. Yeah, that presentation, I mean, there was so many eye-opening things that he talked about what they're doing, which, you know, the general populace just have no idea.
Yeah, you know, it seems like a city of the future, right? I mean, it's really incredible what they're creating there, and then look forward to see how they're gonna roll that into what they're doing at Sunbridge as well.
Right. Well, listen, anywhere you can buy a house, raise a family, and they can go to kindergarten all the way to get a PhD, as he was talking. I think that's just cool.
Yeah, and given what we've had to go through in our homes over the past few weeks, there's a lot we can achieve in a small space. So imagine what you can achieve in that entire community, right? Yeah.
It's for sure. Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. Everybody, staycation is coming up. Housing Innovation Alliance staycation, Wednesday the 22nd. You said what time? 8 a.m.
Starts at 8 a.m. Yep.
And the link to register is in the notes of this cast, and we're going to be putting it out there several more times. So if you are not registered, you need to be registered. Get out there and register. You're going to hear all kinds of stuff, just like we heard from Craig Collins, Dennis Steigerwalt, and so many others in regards to innovation, forward thinking, and what's going to, what's coming and going. I mean, this whole thing's, I can't even put it into words. It's incredible. The amount of people that you have attending and the amount of people that you have speaking and the level of people that you have speaking.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dave. We already have a little over 200 people signed up, and we're expecting those numbers to jump the next couple of days. So we're excited for that.
Yeah. What's the one thing to take us out that you're looking forward to most?
One thing for the staycation itself, home is a service think tank discussion for sure. Yeah. We have all the right players in that dialogue to kind of work through what some of the new future, what some of the trends will be in that specific area. So really excited to see what comes out of that from an alternative business model perspective.
Right. Well, there you have it. Straight from the president of the Housing Innovation Alliance, Dennis Steigerwalt. Dennis, thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye now.
Yep.